Good morning. My name is Tom Turk. I'm the Dean of the Argyros School of Business and Economics here at Chapman University. And I wanted to welcome you to our panel discussion on restoring the California dream. We all love California, but they're concerned. The exodus of businesses and people has suggested that we're losing some of our vitality. And the purpose of today is to frame that discussion on what's really happening in California and get our panel in on how we can restore the California dream and put us on the cutting edge of innovation where we have been for so many decades. To moderate this discussion is Jeffrey Bell. Jeff is the CEO of the Orange County Business Council. He's also the founder, the president, and CEO of Friendly Hills Bank, and he's had a long career with a number of executive roles at Bank of America. He's also the past chair of the California Bankers Association and serves on the board of the Federal Home Loan Bank in San Francisco. He's got his undergraduate degree at Puget Sound and has an MBA from Whittier College. And so I want you to join me in welcoming Jeffrey Ball to get this kicked off.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tom. And it's wonderful to have all of you joining us today for the release of this important work. All of us are very much aware of the challenges that we're facing here in California. And it's wonderful to see such strong research be brought together in such a concise document and presentation that I know you will all enjoy and benefit from. Presenting today, we will have Joel Kotkin. He is the Presidential Fellow at Chapman University and Director of their Center for Demographics and Policy. He has been described by the New York Times as America's uber-geographer. And Joel is an internationally recognized authority on global economic, political, and social trends. And I know you're going to enjoy hearing as he describes the work that he has done with Marshall Toplansky. And Dr. Toplansky is the Clinical Assistant Professor of Management Science at Chapman University's Argyros School of Business and Economics and a research fellow at the university's C. Larry Hoag Center for Real Estate. Two very esteemed gentlemen that have collaborated on a wonderful piece of work that we all have the benefit of hearing. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to them, and then afterwards I will introduce some panelists and we'll have some moderated discussion in response to this. Also, please note that there is an ability to enter your questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Marshall and Joel. Please take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We're very much looking forward to sharing this with you and to reemphasize what Tom said. We are not, we may be accused of it, but we are not California bashers. We love California. We stay here because we believe in it. We think it's a great place. The real dilemma that we have in California today is we can have, even now, in some ways, a incredibly successful economy, people making lots of money and have the highest unemployment rate, the most crowded housing, low affordability, and out-migration of companies and people. So we have to understand that one set of statistics might let us think, well, we're doing great, but these actual social statistics, what's happening in the society and happening outside of the tech sector is not pleasant at all, and we'll show you that. Now, the other thing is that we have a competitive issue going on here. Californians, and, I'm certainly been here 50 years, so I'll call myself a Californian. We tend to think we're better than everyone else and we can outcompete and out-innovate. But you know what? As Satchel Paige said, don't look back. Something may be gaining on you. Just this morning, we get the announcement of Intel, a California company, one of the real fundamental companies of Silicon Valley, is going to invest $20 billion in a plant in Columbus, Ohio. We are seeing so many of the great innovations that we make either ending up creating jobs in Texas, Tennessee, or in China. Now, this has led us to a situation where Californians understand this. Our state government may not get it. Some of the newspapers may not get it, but Californians understand what's going on around them. They understand, for instance, this is recent surveys, 53% are considering moving out out of the state, you've got to be really screwing up to get people to leave paradise. Okay, you really got to be working hard. The reality is most Californians understand that housing and homelessness are major issues, and perhaps the most frightening part is that most Californians think that the next generation will not do as well as the current generation, and we do worse on that than other states. So what we're trying to say is, look, let's take a real assessment of what's going on, acknowledging that California has some great strengths. But if 62% of the people think our best days are behind us, that's not a good sign. And we have to figure out, how do we get all Californians, or more of Californians, involved in the very idea that they're part of a California dream that they can share on. And so what we tried to do is look at what is actually happening in the economy. So I'm going to turn it over to Marshall, who headed up this research, and let's sort of see exactly what's going on. So Marshall?
Thank you, Joel. First of all, thank you all for being here, and we appreciate your coming and listening to the statistics and research that we've put together. This is, as Joel said, this is a complex issue. It's not just, let's put a Band-Aid over here or there and we're going to fix the problem. We have an issue of attractiveness of the state as a place to continue to live and continue to do business. And so we peeled the onion in a number of different ways. We started off by looking at jobs, because obviously, if you don't have growth in jobs and the state can't provide an environment for people to be able to work and thrive, you're not going to have a vibrant economy. So we've started off by looking at how we stack up against other key states. California competes against arguably 10 or 11 other states. We don't compete against some states. We do obviously a fantastic job compared to a lot of states. But when it comes to the states that you see here on the chart, we compete for jobs in a lot of different sectors. So the first thing we looked at was, by decade, how has California really done in terms of growing the number of jobs that are out there? And as you can see, California, which is the second chunk of columns there to the left, in every decade, over the last 3 decades, California has lagged its main competitors in overall percentage change in jobs in the private sector. And when you look across the different economic sectors, industry sectors, whether it's natural resources or construction or manufacturing or trade and finance, in every one of those different sectors over the past 30 years, and this chart takes us from 1990 to 2019, California has seen lower job growth in virtually every industry that its competitors have. There are 1 or 2 examples. For instance, Tennessee did slightly worse than California did in manufacturing, but by and large, California has lagged its main competitors for the past 30 years. So take a look, for instance, in 30-year job growth from that's 1990 to 2019. You can see that California's growth rate was 4 times lower than the top growing states, than Nevada, Utah, Washington, Texas, Arizona, 4 times lower. If you look at it on a per capita basis, which is, I think, the most salient indicator, which is based on the growth or change in the population, are you giving your population the opportunity for new employment? California's growth, for instance, in the manufacturing sector is below virtually every other state in the past 30 years. Today, all of that adds up into the fact that California has the highest unemployment rate by state. Now, interestingly, about 20 minutes ago, the December 2021 numbers came out, and the California number went from 6.9% in November to 6.5% in December. but the US number is 3.4%. So we're almost double the national average. And this is, lagging the US is not something that California is really known for. If you look at it beyond just jobs and look at what creates those jobs, you have to look at the siting and success of business establishments across the state. And this is a particularly worrying area that we uncovered in our research. We found that California is losing corporate headquarters at a very rapid rate. From January 2018 through June 2021, the state lost 265 major corporate headquarters. Now you think about what happens when we lose a corporate headquarters. That means that all of the, not just the jobs that are at headquarters go away, but the ancillary jobs that come from professional services that are serving those corporate headquarters, or the people who are doing food catering at the corporate headquarters, all of that is going away. If you look at it by county, over that time period, LA, San Francisco, Orange County, Santa Clara, Alameda lost the bulk of those corporate headquarters. But corporate headquarters losses are just the tip of the iceberg. Beyond that, are the number of capital projects, the decision by a business to cite a new capital project that will employ tons of people, bring new money into the economic sphere of a particular area. We found that California's rate of new capital projects per capita is 14 times lower than Ohio's, 10 times lower than Texas. So if you take the news story that Joel led with a couple of minutes ago, which is that Intel is building its latest capital project, which is semiconductor fabs in Ohio. Why are we not building those things in California? That's a very worrying trend. And there are obviously a bunch of reasons for that. We decided to go survey California CEOs and understand why, first of all, how much consideration they're giving to relocating their businesses out of state, and why. What we found was that if you look at the people who said that they are seriously or definitely planning a move, which is the blue pie piece over there, and the excuse me, the gray, which is 12%, and the people who said they would move out if they could, that's the majority of businesses, the majority of CEOs are saying that they're thinking seriously about moving out of the state. And 63% of them said they're thinking about it much more seriously than they were in the past. That's a disturbing trend. Why? Well, one of the reasons that they cite is the high level of income tax. It's not so much corporate income tax, it's personal income tax. Right now, the state relies on income tax for about 2/3 of its budget. 66.4% of its budget comes from income tax. Now, the good news about that is with all of the tremendous success that we've seen in investment by Californians in the new digital economy, with IPOs and exits from acquisitions, the amount of money that is coming into state coffers is a huge surplus at the moment. But what would happen if, because we rely so much on those personal income taxes, if suddenly the stock market were to go down and we were not able to, and we saw a big correction and we're not able to have as many exits? This could have a huge deleterious effect on the economy. At the moment, things are looking good, right? We're creating more billionaires than any other state in the country. But how long is that going to last? In our opinion, we're very vulnerable, and businesses, I think, are very worried about that and worried about California's sustainability as a place for innovation. Joel?
Yeah. So, I mean, and even if we have a continuance. I assume that this IPO boom and stock market boom is not going to be as strong this year as last year. But the reality is, even amidst this tremendous gain, we've seen that actually California incomes, this is really quite astounding. Our incomes, once you adjust for the cost of living, are lower than they are in the rest of the country. We actually did some comparisons. States, African Americans do slightly better in Mississippi in real income than they do in California. This is the real story. This is, yes, we have a bunch of basically young people and investors who made a fortune, but the average Californian is not doing so well. If you take a look at the poverty rate, we have about an average rate of poverty, but if you do the cost of living, it increases about by 1.7 million people. We have a very high percentage of children growing up in poverty. To me, I don't want to hear from politicians about how California is so great for social justice because we hand out more goodies to people and help them stay above water, but we're not creating a economy where people can rise up on their own. And I think this has been made much worse by the tremendous rise in housing prices. And I think when you talk to CEOs, and I know in the study that we did, housing prices make it very difficult. There was just the other day talking to an executive, and he said, I can't keep middle-level managers. And actually, I know of a company here in Orange County, an architecture company, that has had to set up offices in Dallas and San Antonio for their employees over 35, because those are the people who are really affected most by the high housing prices. One of the things that's happening, people are leaving. Since 1990, LA County, which was when I moved there, was the avatar of youthfulness, enthusiasm, and trends, lost about 750,000 young people. Overall, we've lost over the last 20 years almost 2 million net domestic migrants out of LA. But the other counties, Santa Clara, Orange, so even places like Santa Clara and Orange have been prosperous. People are leaving, and a lot of it has to do with housing. Next. Then, if we take a look at out-migration over the past 20 years, some people say, oh, it's a right-wing conspiracy. It's conservative myth-making that people are leaving. I don't know. 2.6 million people doesn't strike me as chopped liver. It's a big deal. And as our demographer, Wendell Cox, pointed out, the out-migration in the last 20 years is equal to the total population of Anaheim, San Diego, and San Francisco. Where are people going? First of all, anyone who leaves California is immediately downgraded their physical environment. I mean, in many ways, California is. So, it's not like we're leaving the freezing winters of Michigan. What we're seeing is people are saying, you know what, I'm going to give up the California dream and I'm going to improve my life in Texas, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Colorado, Utah, Florida, Tennessee. Some mostly red states, but some blue states too. We're losing people to almost all our surrounding states. And now people are starting to move further to places like Tennessee. In 2020, we had the biggest out-migration of any state in terms of our now per capita, we're not quite as bad as New York, and we're probably about equal to Illinois. So there are other people who are suffering, but we had about 28% of all the out-migration in 2020 was in California. And this is one of the really shocking things that we found in doing the research, which was we also have seen a big drop in foreign-born people and international migration. Actually, Los Angeles County has negative growth in the last decade in the foreign-born. And anyone who lives here in California knows that it was the foreign-born in large extent, Asian, Hispanic, African, European, who really are so critical to what makes us such an incredibly innovative and culturally rich society. And the fact that those people are now going in many ways to Dallas, Austin, Nashville. You can go outside of Nashville and there's Little Mexico and Little Kurdistan. We had this unique thing here in California with this massive migration from abroad, and that's beginning to drop. The other thing is that we're losing our young people, because one of the things that we're finding is families are moving out of the state, people in their late 20s, early 30s, and we're losing the working age population. So our working age population, which is about, has been about where the national average is going to be much worse. We're aging about 50% faster than the rest of the country. Still not close to the oldest state, but when we look at migration of millennials, the foreign-born, people of working age, the numbers aren't very pretty. And then we also have another problem. One could say, well, okay, we don't have that many people, but that maybe we don't have the masses, but we have well-educated. But we're actually losing our educational attainment. We're not growing nearly as fast as most of our competitors. And I think it would be generally conceived that we have one of the least effective, certainly education solutions in terms of training, and we're particularly bad. And this, I think, is completely horrific. We're completely bad in terms of educating poor kids. So we have a large population of poor kids who are not getting a very good education. That's not very good for the future of business here in California.
Yeah, so if you look at the trends, by the way, what we're showing you today is the tip of the iceberg of information. If you download our report, we have probably 5 times as many statistics in there that you can look at that validate the assumptions that we're making here, which is that people aren't very happy. They're becoming disenchanted with the state. Business is becoming disenchanted with the state. And a lot of the things that have historically made California such an attractive place, like our educational system, are also facing a lot of challenges that are reducing the overall attractiveness of the state. So, okay, it's easy to throw darts. It's easy to be negative and paint a bleak picture. What is it that we can do as business people, as ordinary citizens, to turn things around? Well, the first thing I'd like to point out is that, and this is something that Joel and I are very committed to, as we move forward with our research, we want to engage the business community, all the different constituencies within the state, to unearth and bubble up effective solutions. We don't claim to have the lock on what the solutions should be in totality. We think we have some good ideas, but over the next year or so, as we move forward with our next phase of our research, we want to engage you in the dialogue to be able to unearth really great solutions. But we have some ideas of some solutions right now that we can get started with. The first is to try to address the housing cost problem. Obviously, the problem with housing costs is supply constraints. Why do we have supply constraints? Well, in addition to the fact that obviously people want to live on the coastal strip and there's a limited amount of land right on the coastal strip, the bigger issue is actually, as we got into it, the tremendous cost and time that it takes to get any project, whether it's a residential project or a commercial project or a multifamily project, try to get that approved. We are facing huge issues with CEQA, for instance, the California Environmental Quality Act. The amount of regulatory red tape that any builder or developer has to go through is so much greater in California than it is elsewhere, that it's causing the delay and the costs. The costs we've estimated, by the way, at about $250,000 a unit just for the regulatory costs in California. So our goal here is to try to find a way around that. And so we're proposing a housing opportunity zone in the green area that you see, to be able to just lighten up a little bit on the regulations to try to make it easier for people to be able to build homes, and then, of course, to be able to incent companies to develop their businesses in those areas so that we can have a more balanced view of development in the state. One of the things that we have to do, in addition, and we didn't show this slide in our treasure trove of slides today, but is there's a tremendous amount of variance that businesses face when it comes to taxes, depending upon what industry you're in and depending on how long your business has been in business. We need a rationalization of the tax structure and a complete new look at it. So we want to use two things. First of all, we want to create a commission to look at how to rationalize taxes, how to make it simpler, how to make it more fair for businesses so that there are fewer filings and greater consistency. And the other thing we want to do is to encourage the state to use technology to drive down the cost of compliance so that we don't have the same human costs involved in just complying with state regulatory burdens. The other issue that we hear over and over again when we talk to business executives is that there's a tone problem, a tone and attitude problem in the state of California. The state has a very contentious relationship with businesses. In our surveys, we found that actually local and county governments generally do much better than the state government does at this. But business people complain that the state assumes that they're guilty until proven innocent and have a very accusatory and unhelpful tone. You know, almost every business in the world has had to adopt customer satisfaction and customer focused policies in order to be able to compete. The state has never done that. A lot of local governments, the city of Anaheim is a really great example here in Orange County, have tried to bust through this problem by creating business concierge services where businesses can work directly with government people to help navigate the regulatory environment to be able to get projects done faster. The state needs to adopt something like that as well in order to be able to change what now is the 50th out of 50 states in terms of business climates, whether it's small business or large businesses rating the states. California comes out at the bottom. Another aspect is the state is very focused on environmental metrics. And one of the environmental metrics that's driving a lot of capital spending and is driving, for instance, mass transit spending is this focus on trying to reduce the number of vehicle miles traveled. The pandemic's golden or silver lining is that it has taught us that we can work from home in many industries. The state policy needs to recognize that there is a fundamental shift going on that may not require as much vehicle miles traveled. In addition, the adoption of electric cars makes it questionable about whether the vehicle miles traveled number and metric is even relevant anymore. We need to rethink the entire system of incentives from not only providing the infrastructure for electric cars, but to provide incentives for businesses to continue to allow people to work from home and to give people the incentive to work from home and rethink that entire interchange and policy level issue. That if we do that, we can make California a very efficient and comfortable place to live for people without imposing a tremendous amount of new environmental regulatory burdens. At the moment, as we've talked to government groups all across the country and business groups across the country, we see and believe that the state of California is really in total denial that there's even a problem here. Is anyone really listening? What is it going to take to break through the state's inertia? What else could I do as a business person or you do as a business person to have a larger impact. Traditional business groups seem unable to move those state policymakers to act or even recognize the problem. Are there some untraditional groups that could be mobilized? For instance, could we reach out to labor unions who appear to hold sway over policymakers and get them to see what's in it for them to make the business climate more attractive? These are all areas that we need to explore in order to be able to solve the problem.
Anyway, so I thank you, Marshall. I just want to again hope that you view this not as a typical lecture from professors or whatever, but about engagement and getting you engaged in this process. And so we're starting by going to a very distinguished panel to get their thoughts, and what they have to say and what you have to say will shape what we're going to do over the next few months. So let me just turn it over to Jeff, and again, I look very much forward to your comments.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for all of this wonderful work. And I particularly like not only the way that you've presented the data, but also the way you've started moving towards ideas around solutions, because you're right. We can sit here and complain all day, and we really need to move towards the types of solutions that are going to help to alleviate some of these challenges and bring us back to the California that we all know and love. We have a very distinguished panel of 3 professionals with us here today that we would like to get some of their reaction to what they just heard and maybe what some of their thoughts are around some of the issues and solutions. We have with us Raul Anaya, who is the president of business banking for Bank of America. We are blessed to have him based right here in Southern California, and he is part of the executive management team that helps set the bank's overall strategic direction. He also co-chairs B of A's Hispanic Latino Executive Council, which is a group of 200 of the company's most senior Hispanic Latino executives here in the United States, and he is the immediate past chair of the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, where he has provided a tremendous amount of leadership through the development of a CEO roundtable. Joe Hensley is the market president of Orange County for U.S. Bank. Joe has been in the banking industry for over 40 years now. He leads the U.S. Bank effort here in Orange County and over 1,000 employees that they have here in this region. He serves on the board of the Orange County Business Council, where he is our immediate past chair, also the Orange County Housing Trust, and is chair of the California State University Fullerton's Board of Governors Philanthropic Foundation. Also joining us is Carla Lopez Del Rio. She is the executive director of Riverside County's Community Action Partnership. She is a community development executive with a strong track record of creating collaboration and helping to lead research initiatives that promote more equitable public policies. And I know these are all areas that are very near and dear to her heart as we start looking towards some of these solutions. She is a member of the Board of Advisors for the Center for Demographics and Policy at Chapman, and just a great professional that we're delighted to have as part of our panel. So Raul, let me start with you, and from your perspective with Bank of America, and maybe some of your initial reactions to what you've just listened to, and some of your thoughts towards driving these solutions.
Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff. Look, I think the study was spot on. I mean, these are the things that I hear directly from clients in California. Again, my segment in business banking that I had nationally, we handle companies that have annual revenues from $5 million to $50 million across all industries up and down the state, and these are real issues. During about earlier this year, I guess. Earlier 2021 now, since we're in January, when I was chairing the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, myself and a couple of other leaders of the LA Chambers, we wanted to create and serve as a catalyst for some change. And so I applaud everything that this group has been doing. We helped organize, and we worked with you, Jeff, and your predecessor, as well with the Orange County Business Council, as well as with the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, to make a regional effort in the creation of the CEO Council, which me and a couple of other leaders of the LA Area Chamber of Commerce created. And the purpose of it, we created a document called Balance California. So it's amazing that all this great work that all of you are doing dovetails very nicely with some of the work that we're doing for all of Southern California. And the idea there is to execute on a strategy called Balance California, which in a nutshell is for the business community to organize at the CEO level to help bring a more job-friendly economic growth agenda for California. And the business community wants to be part of the solution. So we created this document, and very quickly, we have now recruited over 100 CEOs in Southern California. So I'm talking about the CEOs of companies like Mattel and SpaceX, the LA Rams, LA Clippers, some large well-known names, to more family-owned businesses such as Northgate Markets, to other smaller companies. And I think the reason for it is because the business community is now at a point to where we want to be part of the solution. And that's the whole purpose of the CEO Council is. And so we've identified two things. And those are the same two things, quite frankly, that this report talks about. One is workforce housing. We need to increase production of housing supply so that our teachers, our first responders, our nurses, our workforce don't have to commute an hour into whatever location they live in because they're having challenges. And that's long-term, it's just not sustainable. So we've got two CEOs that are experts in that arena. That's what they do, and they've recruited other CEOs around real estate. That work is underway to come back with some very tangible recommendations at the local and state level of what is needed in order to help increase production. And then the second thing is around workforce development. How do we help upskill and reskill all of the Californians that have not been able to benefit with the new post-COVID environment? And so we've got two CEOs in the healthcare system. We have recruited all of the presidents of the state and private universities in Southern California to work with these CEOs to come up with and develop ideas around how do we educate and upskill, those workers that perhaps have been left behind. And so, what's exciting about this is we finally have, we are rallying the business community. It's a regional effort to help drive change and help change the narrative with our elected officials, with community activists, with labor, that business is a force for good. We want the same things that everybody else wants, a booming California, a California where our kids and our future generations can thrive here just like we all are. But right now, the trends are not sustainable, and we are now at a point to where we have rallied the business community at the CEO level with over 100 CEOs signing up to this, wanting to bring change, positive change, to help balance California.
Well, I appreciate all of those comments, and you're right. Having the ability to provide a more vibrant supply of housing is extremely important, and it's variety in that housing. A lot of our policies tend to focus more towards higher density urban, and we know that the market would like to have something a lot more suburban. And certainly with the implementation of technology, more people working from home, I think it creates even further arguments towards the market demand towards part of a suburban environment. But yet, as was pointed out, we had a question that was posed in regards to the governor's proposed budget, which is highly focused on minimizing vehicle miles traveled and therefore creating greater incentives around more urban development, which of course is counter to what our panelists are suggesting with the whole idea of a housing opportunity area. Let me turn to you, Carla, because I know housing, while we're on that topic, is near and dear to your heart, and you have done so much work there in the Inland Empire. For us here in Orange County, we have a significant part of our workforce that is commuting from your area. Talk a little bit about housing and why that's so important to these solutions, please.
Absolutely, Jeffrey. And I'm really sorry I'm sick today. My voice comes in and out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. But thank you for having me. I'm going to just say very practically how it works out for people. The median, I was talking about this in our prep call, the median salary for the city of Irvine, which is one of the fastest growing cities in California. And I just want to say that when it comes to demographics, in the coast, the cities are no longer growing. The growing cities, of the 10 top growing cities, I believe 5 of them are in the Inland Empire where I'm located. And sorry, I need to take my breath. And if you think about the one city that is growing in the coast, which is Irvine, the median or the average salary of a person is about $21, which sounds like a lot of money. And it is a lot of money. And I was saying, particularly when you're paying that salary to someone, it's a hefty number. But what it looks like on the other side as a recipient of that is about a $3,000 net pay. That's what you take in your pocket to be able to pay your rent. The median rent in the city of Irvine is about $2,900. So it doesn't pencil out. And when people are then taking, the big decision of that huge commute, which takes a toll on their health, and it takes a toll on their family and the communities that they leave behind here, because parents leave at 6 o'clock in the morning, come back 7 o'clock at night, and they don't come back to be able to do homework or participate in schools. They're tired and they're getting ready for the next day to do it all over again. So the solutions that you're talking about speak very clearly to the Inland Empire and the growth that we're seeing. So when it comes to housing, when people are coming from Irvine with their $21 an hour, they're finding that our rents are going up as well. We've gone up 12% in the last year, and 15% in one of the counties and 12% in the other. So the housing solutions that we can bring to the area have to speak to the realities of who we're serving. And we are serving commuters. Yes, those are absolutely people we should support with this new idea of, transportation is now almost equivalent to broadband. The fact that we're all sitting here and from the comfort of my home, I can share with you, is really changing the reality for a lot of people. So retaining talent in the Inland Empire is difficult when you can be a renter forever in California and you can be a homeowner somewhere in Tennessee or Nebraska or these other areas in Texas that are opening up. So the housing crisis that we're having is not just the fact that we're not able to produce affordable housing, we're not leading towards the dream of homeownership. And it's still a very prevalent feeling that people are having. So I think that workforce housing is a great way for us to start. But if we are not able to deliver on the California dream of owning a house where people feel that they are thriving, we are going to continue to lose people. And finally, when it comes to housing, the type of housing that we are producing, the younger people, the millennial populations, and in California, that's really important to understand. The older populations are mostly in the coast. The coasts are the aging populations. It's the inland populations that bring that younger workforce and also the family formation years of all these young people. But you have to think about who they are. The Inland Empire is extremely diverse. It's about 70% of people of color. And that means that we have an enormous diversity that we need to tap into. And it means that a lot of people here are looking into generational housing type designs and not so much of the designs that have been of the past. So even the way that we construct our communities really matters in our competitiveness with the rest of the world. And if we want to upskill and we want to reskill people to be able to afford homes here in the Inland Empire, we got to be shooting for the stars. And the people are ready. I'm an example of that, of being able to upskill and reskill and be able to take on the future. So the future of California is really here in the Inland Empire, and the housing in California and the space in California is here in the Inland Empire. So we need to really take this approach that Raul was talking about of regional collaborations, understanding that we are an economy, our economy, not just the Orange County economy or the inland economy. It's all of us together that need to bring up the skills and talents of every single individual in California and allow them to turn that into an investment in their future that delivers on the American dream.
Great. Well, I appreciate those comments. And as you and I have discussed in the past, it's, we do need to work from a regional perspective. People don't pay attention to county lines anymore. We have people commuting across county lines all the time, and it clearly needs to be a regional solution. And as Joel and Marshall are proposing a statewide solution that we look at. A lot of the questions we've been getting in Q&A, Joe Hensley, are related to taxation, the concentration of our tax revenues with the state, the fact that you've got, the 1% paying 50%, but yet, that's the element of the population that is, I would argue most transportable. And you guys as a national bank probably have a unique perspective around some of these trends. I'd be interested in some of your thoughts as to this report and some of the solutions that have been suggested.
Well, thanks, Jeff. I don't disagree with Carla at all. I believe the Inland Empire is a lot of the future of Orange County as well as the state as a whole. I think we need to think somewhat differently. And here in Orange County, the population age 65 and older continues to grow, and the median age has increased to 38.6. And so to go back to some of Raul's comments, as people gather together to go to the state and to discuss important factors, I think the state is willing to meet more. Prior to COVID, I used to lobby once a year in Sacramento, once a year in DC. And since COVID, we've done several Zoom meetings, and we now look at meeting with our legislative people quarterly and trying to discuss what's going on in our communities, as well as what's going on with our businesses. And, one of the things that impresses me about Orange County and living here is just from an economic development point of view, it's sort of like businesses continue to grow despite the state. But the real issue we have, and it's been talked about over and over again, is the housing. And it's only gotten worse in the last 2 years, where the median price of a house right now in Orange County is $1,090,000, and we're about 184,000 units short. And so from my perspective, Jeff, I think remote work plays a big part in this, where people can live in a place that's more affordable, and we can develop, as the guys mentioned in their report, different parts of the state where people can afford to live. And, one of a recent article that I read just reminds me of this. The title of it is "Experts in a World That No Longer Exists." And I think if we continue to think the same way, if we don't change our paradigm and start thinking regionally as opposed to just Orange County or LA, I think we will lose out on the opportunity to continue to live the California dream. And I will say, my last comment is, if you really look at Southern California, we're 22 million people over, I think it's 42,000 square miles roughly. And we represent the largest majority of the state. And yet, for some reason in Sacramento, San Francisco still has more dominance than the southern part of the state. And I think we need to exercise our muscles regionally to have more of an impact for our region. And with that, I'll close that out.
No, I think those are excellent comments, and it all points to the fact that using the work that's been done here by our friends at Chapman is so instrumental in business, really developing policies and initiatives in Sacramento that really drive towards a lot of these solutions that we clearly need, and its influence that's going to happen throughout the state. And so you make some excellent points. Joel, I want to ask a question of you that's really come in through the Q&A box, and we've had several comments that have come in just related to the fact that we understand the data, we got a lot of people that are leaving, but yet our rent prices still go up, our housing costs keep going up. What's driving a lot of this increase? And I'm guessing the answer has to do with the supply, but I'd be interested from your work as our uber-geographer and what you think is driving a lot of these changes or continued increases in housing valuation.
Well, I think there are several things. One, of course, is there's been an increase in housing prices nationwide after the pandemic, and so it's not just unique California factors, but there are a couple of big things. One, California has extraordinarily strict regulations, particularly building the kind of housing that most people want, which is single family, townhome, somewhat spacious housing. It's very, very difficult to build. So the state keeps thinking we'll develop the housing high density in the inner city. Well, that's going to be very expensive, because when you restrict the ability of the land market to be open, you end up increasing the prices. Then, of course, we add lots of other things. If you get any state aid, you got to do prevailing wage. You got to do, you got to be all electric. You got to put solar. By the time you're done, you've increased the price by an enormous amount. And so the key thing for California is going to be, how can we do what we did before? Now, we can do it in a sustainable way. I've been to wonderful new developments like Ontario Ranch, where they are doing things in a very environmentally responsible way. Irvine does things in a responsible way. But we have to be able to, part of the California dream is our ability to create communities people are going to want to live in. And we're making that very, very difficult. And somehow somebody in the state thinks everybody wants to live in a studio apartment, and ride the bus to work. And every piece of evidence is that they want something different. And it's not just a question of building housing, it's building the housing that people actually want and can afford. And we're not doing that.
Yeah, no, I think those are all excellent points. And Marshall, I want to turn to you for a second and talk a little bit about the fact that, we've got all these wonderful educational institutions, particularly higher education here in California. We have students coming here from all over the world to get their education. But as soon as you guys turn them out, they leave. What can we do through the education community to help to improve some of that? And I know it seems like everything we keep talking about circles back to housing, but let's talk a little bit about workforce development, because Raul appropriately pointed out that's a big part of the focus for his CEO group. What can education do to help in that area?
Well, I think that's a great question. And, I suppose you could look at this as a sign of success, that we're able to educate people who have such a broader impact on the rest of the world. But the failure part of it is that we educate people and can't absorb them into our own local economy. And that in order to be able to make that happen, we need tighter links between the business community and the educational community. We need to be teaching the things that are going to have the highest market value for people here locally. I know at Chapman, we take this very seriously, right? We have a team of people that is engaged with local business people to be able to make sure that we have, if it's not the right curriculum in a formal sense, maybe it's things like our analytics accelerator program, which help make students more fit better the profile of what employers are looking for. But it's that interaction that is most important to be able to make happen. And a lot of our educational institutions around the world are somewhat disconnected from the markets that they serve. So that's what I think is the highest priority.
Great. And Raul, I'm going to turn back to you for a second, because you've brought up some wonderful points around the CEO group that you had formed and how it's looking at a lot of these different areas. And part of the solutions that were presented, Raul, were kind of around this accusatory tone that we seem to have towards the business community. And maybe you could share a little bit with the benefit of the CEO group and some of the focus that you're making in order to try to get us to maybe a more accommodative posture on the part of state government towards the whole aspect of business growth. Because I would argue, in addition to the wonderful things that have been pointed out in this study, we need to grow the economy. Our obligations with our state and our municipalities have grown exponentially, and we're going to have to grow our way out of this debt. Share with us some of the thoughts about how that group is working to create this more accommodative structure so we can get this imperative growth that we need.
Yeah, Jeff, let me just touch on the prior point that was discussed around workforce development. The idea here, and again, some ideas and recommendations are being developed by two very well-known healthcare CEOs and a group of other CEOs, as well as the presidents of the various public and private universities, higher ed. But for the first time, I think the universities will have access to over 100 CEOs to really understand what the needs are of their businesses, of these companies, across 13 different industry subsectors, so that over time, there's a closer partnership of graduating students where there's going to be jobs already ideally waiting for them. I mean, that's the idea, that's the concept. And so, super excited about some of the work that's underway. But specifically to answer your other question, Jeff, around, this accusatory tone, look, business, we have not done a very good job organizing ourselves in the past, right? There's other stakeholders of the community that have. And I think now for the first time, we've all realized that and recognized that, which is why there's so many CEOs that have signed up to this. That quite frankly, part of this is making sure that we do a better job telling our story. The CEOs, the entrepreneurs that took an idea and grown it into a company that has hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of employees, paying taxes, creating, a great economy for all of us, we need to do a better job of telling that story. Many of these companies are very philanthropic. They not only provide dollars to help support the nonprofit community, but they also have employees that are involved in the community. We need to do a better job telling our story, letting the community know that business is a force for good. It is not this evil type of institution. We want to create jobs. We want to help improve the quality of life for all Southern Californians. And there's obviously other stakeholders in the community that have a different view, different approach. We want to change that now. And part of it is educating our elected officials of all the things that the business community does very well, with philanthropy, with employee volunteerism, with the job creation, paying taxes. And now for the first time, we're going to be able to walk into a room with CEOs of large publicly held companies, to regional companies, to local mom and pops, visiting, with the governor, visiting with all the mayors, with the county supervisors, the state assembly, the state senators, and say, look, you've got CEOs here that want to be part of your solution, that want to help make the California dream just as vibrant as it was decades ago. And at the end of the day, the CEOs have choices. And we've seen that time and time again with like the CEOs of AECOM, of Reliance Steel and Aluminum, of Tesla, that have moved their operations to Texas. And that's just, you mentioned over 265. There's a bunch of others. I think, we don't want to leave. The business community does not want to leave. We want to build and make California what it's always been. That's why we're here. We want to be part of the solution. And now we're organizing around that at the CEO level to help be part of the solution around housing and around workforce development. And so, we hope that the journey it's just starting. It's a long-term effort, and we're all excited to make that happen.
Well, it's a great effort, and I'll be honest, it's a big part of the reason why I chose to leave the industry and come into this job, because I see that opportunity, and it's working with our educational partners like we have here at Chapman, that we as a business community can continue to work forward and drive these policies. I want to thank Marshall and Joel for this wonderful work. I want to thank our three panelists for being with us here today. I hope you all found the information very enlightening. I know Chapman will be following up to get you information on how you can download the report and be able to share it with others. And Tom, I'm going to turn it back to you here. with all of this wonderful information and discussion that hopefully will energize all of us to move forward with business and education working together to create the better California, the California that I think brought us all here in the first place. So with great thanks to Chapman, I turn it back to you, sir.
Jeff, thank you very much. And thank you for everybody that is joined in on this today. I think Marshall and Joel, you do a great job of moving us beyond the anecdotes to real data on what's happening. And I think the big takeaway from here is the loss of vitality in the state is real, it's documentable, it's economically significant, and it's easily fixable. And I think by the report you've put together that frames the problem so clearly, and the discussions we've had following on how we might be able to react to it, hopefully that's the continuation of a more serious attempt to restore the California we love. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you all for each of the panelists for doing such a great job.